All right, so this is the third session. This is the third class in the whole series, and I will be talking about design principles quickly, as quickly as I can. So, design principles are they are guidelines. They are guiding principles that every designer follows. They are like the universal rules. They are like the universal procedures that if a designer in this continent picks up a design, they can look out for some certain things. And if they can find it in your design, then you've successfully created a great design. So I'm trying to say design principles are what separates a great design from a fine design, a beautiful design. A design can be fine, but be lacking in specific principles. And in some cases, a design can look so basic and be very rich in design principles. So it's as straightforward as that. There is no professional designer who should not or who is not expected to be familiar with design principles. If you are a designer and you don't understand design principles, they don't feature in your work, then um, you have a long way to go. So yeah, that's what principles do. That is what we look out for when we want to, work with other designers, hire designers, assess designs. Right? You look out for design principles. So without wasting time, all right. So the first principle I will be talking about is the principle of contrast. Contrast. What does contrast do? So contrast is a principle that allows you to work with different elements of contrasting features. Um, I really don't want to use the word contrast and contrasting to explain this, but it's a kind of procedure that allows you to pick up elements of different natures in order to achieve a specific purpose. And what's the purpose? Your purpose can be for aesthetics, that's to create something beautiful. It can be to create clarity, that's to assist whoever is viewing your work, assessing your work, or using your product or whatever you have designed. So contrast can be in terms of picking different colors to achieve a particular purpose on your design. Contrast can be in terms of using different shapes to achieve a particular purpose. The idea, the concept is basically picking different things to achieve one. But my explanation will be so inclined to that of bringing different colors to achieve clarity. That's to explain contrast properly. So if you look at the illustration I've done, there is this ellipse and then the number one, and there is another ellipse number two. So the idea is to achieve contrast in a particular design. The rule is straightforward. In terms of colors, it means your background color and whatever you are laying on it must not be entirely related in such a way that your readers, your viewer, or whoever is looking at your work will struggle to see the content of what you're showing them. So, and a perfect example of it is this first one. The background is clearly in a family of gold, a family of yellow, gold, and to achieve proper contrast, to achieve proper contrast, I use the black text. So it means you can look at this from afar and still see the figure, the number one in the middle. But if you come to this other one, this is a bad case of contrast. You are only permitted to do this, of course, because as a designer, you have the freedom to, be creative with your work. But in the process of being creative, if you allow your viewers to strain their eyes, if you allow them to struggle before they get your message, then your design has only successfully been fine, but you have not used the right principle, and in that sense, the design will not be termed as a great one. So if you look at this from afar, you may struggle to see what's inside till you move closely, and then you see that there is a figure 2 inside. So contrast basically is, do not use two colors that will not allow you to pass your message clearly. And why exactly are we trying to pass messages clearly with colors? Who cares? Well, the thing is, there is this concept in design called accessibility. I have mentioned accessibility in a previous session. So in this case, accessibility in design allows you to cater to the needs of someone who is visually impaired. So you are designing something while you are trying to ensure that the design is fine, you're thinking aesthetics and all. If you put this figure 2 on this same background, you can rest assured that yes, you've done something creative, but you have not helped your audience who may be visually impaired. Compare the results of someone else showing them, a competitor showing them the same products designed by different people, and then they are seeing this one with a black text on this gold background, and then this faded variant of this same color of number 2 on this same background. You have not allowed your design to be accessible. In that case, you have failed the accessibility test. If you are presenting your design to someone that is visually impaired. So the concept is, the idea is, you want to try as much as possible to allow any kind of human, any form, with any challenge, with any ability, with any feature, to be able to use your design, to be able to access it and to digest the message. That's where accessibility comes from. So that's the concept, the idea behind contrast as a design principle. An example of a familiar context of contrast is on our mobile apps. If you pay attention to the buttons that you see, you would find out that in any case where the background of the button or it has a light background, a light color as a background, then the text is naturally expected to be dark. On the other hand, if the button has a dark background, for example, navy blue, then the text on it is expected to be a lighter variant of it. It could be sky blue or white. But if you use navy blue as a background and then you use black text on it, you have failed the accessibility test. And in that case, even your viewers will struggle, your users will struggle to use your product. So that's that. Okay, so yeah, I'll be talking about the next one is the Gestalt principles. So it's a principle that spans beyond design. It features in biology, in psychology, in different areas, but particularly for design, the principles are quite much. They are quite more than this, but I'm picking out two, of course, because the scope of this course is, to focus on design at the beginner to intermediate level. So I won't be going so deep into the complex forms of things. So I'm picking out just proximity and similarity as sub-principles under these Gestalt principles. However, we are still talking about design principles altogether. So what does this suggest? What does it tell us? It tells us that anytime we pick up a design and then we see that some elements are closely arranged, they are arranged in such a way that they are closer to one another than some other set of designs. Proximity in that sense automatically suggests to us that the elements that are closely related have some features, or the user intends for us to pick a form of similarity between or among elements that are closely packed than the ones that are far apart. Even though they look similar, you could tell they are a group of ellipses and all, but there's a reason why these ones are grouped this way, and then there's a reason we have this amount of space before this. right? So everything may still sound abstract, but okay, let me try and pick up. Do I have something like that? Yes. Okay. So if you look at this design now, for example, number one says O1 creates, then creativity is a phenomenon and all. We can group this first element, right? Because they are closely related, we can tell that from here 01 to this last word formed, they are closely related. Therefore, they are different from this next one, even though they look similar, right? This is 01, this is 02. They are both numbers. This is create, it's bold, and then this is like a body text. This is the same structure, this is the same structure. However, because these guys are closely packed, and there's a space, we can already tell that there is a form of difference between these two groups, and then there's a form of similarity within these two groups. I mean, within this group. So that's the principle of proximity. Suggests that anything closely packed together in a design or on a design are closely related. However, any group that is not closely packed, any group that is spaced, that there is a difference in terms of proximity, automatically suggests that the messaging may be different, and you are not expected to group or understand it as one thing. So the next one is similarity. Similarity can be in terms of shape, it can be in terms of color, it can be in terms of any other thing, right? It can be in terms of the size. So whenever you see on a particular design, you can see different elements, varieties of elements, but some things stand out. Let's say this is the first line, this is the second line. On the first line, you could see an ellipse, you could see a square, and an ellipse, a square. Automatically, you can suggest that every square on this design as a whole can mean one thing, while every ellipse on this same design can mean something else. That's what the principle says. It means elements that have similar natures in terms of colors, in terms of size, in terms of shape, may suggest that they have a form of similarity. Coming back to this again, right, we can tell that this 01, we can't really tell the size it is now, right, because we don't have the raw file, but you can try and picture the size. If you come here, it has the same size. Come here, it has the same size. If you look at the color, this is not white, this is not black, it's in the gray family. If you come here again, the next gray item you will see is 02. The next gray item you see is 03. That suggests that this and this are numbers, and then they are not just random numbers, they are numbers that are introducing a list. The same thing for this create, focus, and invest. Their sizes are obviously different from what you have on the other elements, even though we have used proximity to separate them, that this has a different message from this. But altogether, if you see this particular size and you look around and the next place you find it is on this, the next place you find it is on this, then you can conclude that any text that has this size and this full white color is probably the title of this point, of each point that the flyer is trying to suggest. And point 1 is what? Create. Point 2 is focus. Point 3 is invest. So that is the principle of similarity. Once you see similar items consistently, they are likely to suggest the same thing. So it means any message or any theme you find for this, you are likely to find that this also embodies it. This also embodies it. So that's the overview of these two principles. So the next principle I will be talking about is the principle of balance. So in any design, in any standard design, So now I am not saying any design, because of course there are fine designs out there, but I'm not following the design principles. So in any standard design, in any proper design, a principle you can find. So one disclaimer also, these principles are more, they are more than what I have listed. You can pick up a particular design and find just two principles. You can pick up a design and find all of them. You can pick up a design and find just one or four principles. But when no principle is present, then there's a problem, right? So yeah, I'm saying one of the principles you can find on a design is balance. And what is balance? Balance is when you have intentionally created a sense of equilibrium with your design as the designer. You have helped whoever is viewing your work not to have this psychological confusion where a part of this design is so heavy with content and this other side is unexplainably empty, right? So balance helps you to cover for these lapses and helps your design to come off well, come off with a sense of equilibrium, right? So these are illustrations, right? There are ways that we can achieve balance on our design. We can achieve balance in a way of, putting an item of an equal size, of a particular size, on the right hand side, and another item of an equal size on the right hand side. In that way, in that sense, if this is our worksheet, we have created a balance, a psychological balance, of course, with this. Another way we can achieve balance is when we arrange our items, to be balanced from, to follow a central line of the whole worksheet. So balance can either be symmetrical, it could be asymmetrical, right? Balance can be achieved when you are placing items side by side, right? It can be achieved when you are stacking items and then you are trying to create a form of movement through the middle of your design. But the design that lacks balance, we have a structure like this. It could be an heavy image of, a model, a stock image or something, and then there's just a tiny text, something here. There's a sense of imbalance. So that way, the principle of balance may be lacking. I have some random designs to show you the principle of balance in action. Okay, from this. So if you pick up this design, right? This designer has placed the date on the top left corner. They placed PSD on the right hand corner. So automatically we've seen something like this, left and right, right? Left and right. There is a sense of balance from the top of this design already. And then if you look down through the middle, the main, let's say the model or the performing artist or whoever, the picture is bold and it's heavy and it's placed in the center of the design, right? To continue with that pattern of, balancing things through the center after achieving balance already from the top here, the designer had to pick up a text, that is also that has a proportion. We're not the same size, of course, but a design that a text that also has a kind of heavy size that can give you that proportion to help you continue that balance. And if you look through the design till you come down, you find out that everything is now stacked through the middle. Everything is stacked through the middle. So if this were to be a scale now, right? We have placed something on the left, we have placed something on the right. Automatically, no part of it will be heavier than the other. This designer has done well by helping us achieve that. So let's ditch this top part now and come to the middle. Let's say this is also a scale from here down, and then you put everything through the center. Automatically, nothing will way to the left and drag down the right, and nothing will pull down our scale on the right and affect the left, because everything has now come through the middle. So again, balance can be achieved in a central way. It can be achieved by also placing items side by side. But in the real case, I mean, the concept actually suggests that whatever you are placing to achieve this balance can be of equal weight and may not be of equal weight. That's asymmetrical, may not be of equal weight. However, there must be a presence of something to still help you suggest that you are trying to balance things. But imagine if this model's picture is on the left, music party on the left, featuring everything on the left, and nothing is on this right. Automatically, we do not have a balanced design. So, I mean, if it's a test of checking for balance, the design will fail. So, another example we have is this. Of course, in a branded design, for example, designers follow brand guides, and for this brand, the logo stays at the top right corner, and nothing takes it away. Nothing can move this thing away from where it is, right? So this is an exception. But looking at the contents that you have power over as a designer, that you can manipulate, that you can change. If you look at this range, right? If you look at this range, we can see how the pictures of the products are stacked heavily to the right. And to achieve the same balance, automatically we can see snack game strong, using a strong text also to balance things up from this angle. Coming down, you'll see this play on text and play on background, and also to complement this snack game strong and aligning it towards the left, right? So the idea is the weight of this of the parfait, of the chicken pie, the sausage and everything is actually heavier than the weight of this text. So in order to balance things up from the left, I mean, to balance things up on the left and on the right, the text was also aligned to flow to the left hand side, so that we can have a balanced design, right? Another way to balance this thing would be to move this body of text and place it in the center. So as long as you have tried to achieve balance or a sense of balance in this angle, anything that comes to the middle will only assist in just finishing up the balance, right? So that's balance and play again for this design, or as principle. So all right, the next principle I will be talking about is the principle of hierarchy. So all of these are things that you're hearing, in the theory. You must have seen some of these things before, but you may not pay attention to them or know what they are called, right? But again, in every proper design, you should find at least one or two principles in play. So the principle of hierarchy says, as a designer, you have the freedom to pick up any element of design to suggest the most important part of your design to whoever is reviewing or assessing your work. I did a form of, practical here. I've seen something like this online before, and when I saw it, I found myself going through the same thing I was saying. It says, even though this was placed above this and then this below this, right? The first text you are likely to see naturally is what this. It says you will see this first, and then if you look down, it says then this. Then you can now remember that, oh, there's something on top of them that is supposed to be what I should have seen first. It says and finally this, right? On a normal day, I could place this second line. I could put it on the as the first line. I could bring this to follow it next, and then this to follow it last. But again, I'm a designer, and then I have the creative freedom to do what I want. However, I will still try as much as possible to help anybody viewing my work in my absence, to let them know the most important thing I want them to see first and the least important thing I want them to see. For example, in this um in this design, okay, yeah, in this design we can see create, we can see focus, we can see invest. That's to tell you that for each point, the title of each point is actually more important than the explanation under it or the description of the title. So the main heading, the heading is what? Create. Then you can now come down. What about create? It says creativity is a phenomenon whereby something new and somehow valuable is formed. Then if you come down, you are not likely to come and read people think focus means. You are not likely to read that first before you notice focus. Because the idea is you are expected to see focus before any other thing under point two. And the designer was able to achieve that because they understand the principle of hierarchy in design. They are not here now, but we can, help them fulfill what they had in mind while designing this. That's the principle of hierarchy. So hierarchy can be achieved in um, by the weight of the text you're using. It can be achieved by color. For example, you can be so consistent with using dark text, dark properties, dark images and all. Now suddenly you introduce a touch of red. Red is a very vibrant color. In your absence, we are viewing your design. We are likely to come across red and want to see what's happening in red first before we come back to the other things that are obviously all over, right? So hierarchy can be achieved using colors, can be achieved using imagery, for example, using the weight of your text also. But the goal, the purpose is you want to suggest, you want to direct whoever is viewing your work to see the most important thing before the next important thing, before the least important thing, or before the important thing, and then before the least important thing. So that's um, all about hierarchy. I have a sample. Okay, yes, for this, for example, we are expected to open this design and know what the party is all about before we start reading details about the party. Is to tell us that number one, it's a music party. It's not a house party, it's not a dance party, it's not a drama party or whatever, it's a music party. After music party, okay, so it seems the date and this text both have the same sizes, the same size, right? So yeah, in this case, we may choose which to see first. But again, you will observe that I highlighted this and this. Why not this? Of course, because this is a smaller part of the design. So I'm likely to come to this last after I've already consumed music party, the date, featuring who, DJ Legs, DJ Strong, and then the location, and then the final information. Call on this number and call. So yeah, that's hierarchy in play. That's how you tell someone the most important part of your design without pointing them to it, right? With the understanding of the principle, you are to use what will automatically point them to it in your absence. That is hierarchy in play. The next principle I will talk about is white space. So white space, as the name suggests, white space, it means you're dealing with spaces around your design, and well, it may be white, it may not be white. The idea is white space, empty space, breathing space, space. The concept is, the principle is, allow your design to breathe as much as possible. There is no point, there is no need, there is really nothing that requires you to choke up things in such a way that people will struggle to get your message. So a perfect example of a design with white space properly taken into accountability is the first one. So if you look at how I arranged the ellipses, so this is supposed to be a representation of my worksheet, and then I placed the biggest ellipse in this area, the next one here, the next one here. I can walk around freely here without touching the boundary. I had no need to touch the boundary while arranging this, right? But in this case, well, maybe because I had too many things to put together, maybe because I'm a designer, I can do what I like, and I don't understand design principles. Then this is touching the boundary, this and these are overlapping, this is here, and everything looks clustered and all. So is um, this is a result, or this will be a result of a designer that probably does not know the principle of white space and why it is important in design. It allows your message to be absorbed clearly as possible, as clearly as possible. It also helps again the visually impaired. So you can imagine trying to show someone who is struggling naturally to perceive or to pick up your design and get your message. You are still struggling to show them the few things they can see by putting everything all over, and then trying to distract them, and they are struggling with their attention and what the actual message is. So this is an example, a web page of, that white space was actually considered. So in UI UX design, white space is very key. White space is very key. You could just wonder, sometimes you may wonder, you are viewing a web page and then the whole design and everything looks to be in the center, but nothing is happening here. Nothing is happening here. They could have scaled this illustration, and so people can see clearly and all, but this designer understands white space and the need to allow things to breathe. So I'll show you different places where white space featured. So number one, obviously, this side, white space, this side, white space, right? Again, if you look at this, these two buttons, get started now. Because the button is as large as this person may be tempted to enlarge the size of the text. And why not make my G almost touch here and then my N almost touch here? No, but because the principle of white space allows your work to be neat, allows people to be able to read, it helps readability, it helps them to get your message clearly, then you will not fall for the temptation of scaling things till they touch the edges. They don't need to touch the edges. Allow your design to breathe. If you look at this too, there's also white space around this area. There's also white space below this design. There's also white space, around each logo. This is supposed to be logos of their partners or people who have used their products and all. So that's white space in play for a web page. As an example, I'm tempted to come back to this web page when talking about. Okay. So I just observed one of the principles, or some of the principles we talked about in play. So if you look at the principle of proximity and then Gestalt principle of similarity. Proximity tells us that this, from tools, channels, pricing, blog, amount, and customers. If you look at the spaces among these, you can tell that it's not the same space you have here. Obviously, These elements that are tightly grouped here are of the same group or are of the same family. And what are they? That's the nav bar, the navigation bar, or the navigation of the whole web page. So if I need to navigate to any page, go to tools, channels, pricing, blogs, then this is where I have to come to. This is also widely spaced from this. Why? Because this is the logo. It is not a link like the other ones, right? And also on this side, I have login, I have get started now, meaning these two are likely to take me to a different page or a different workflow, either logging in and starting as someone who has already used the product, or someone who is about to start using, but I will no longer be here. Therefore, these two buttons, these two elements are of a different group. The proximity between them versus the proximity among all of these suggests that these are of the same family, and that family is different from the family of this. So that's proximity in play. Proximity in terms of closeness or in terms of how widely apart they are. So another one is similarity. If you look at the colors, we have this blue here and then the same blue of this login. That will tell you that these two are similar, right? These guys also have their own colors. They are not fully black. Then the similarity in their colors also suggests that they are not the same with this one we are seeing here, right? And again, this is also hierarchy in play. Before I come to read buffer helps you build an audience organically, I would have probably read this: grow your audience on social and beyond. Because this text is actually bigger, way bigger and bolder than any other text on this web page. That's emphasis. That's hierarchy in play, used to achieve emphasis, to point us to the most important message on this home page. Alright, so not to waste time, I will move to the next principle quickly, and that's the principle of alignment. Alignment is how you creatively arrange the items on your worksheet. It's straightforward, is as the word implies. Alignment is how you creatively or intentionally or mistakenly, alignment is just how you choose to arrange the items on your the items on your worksheet, the elements on your worksheet in your design, how you intend to align it. So this is an example of a good alignment. Why this? I can't even say bad alignment because nothing is aligned, right? This is aligned, however, aligned to the left. So one thing I need to show you quickly for alignment is in the first session I recorded, I talked about how whatever you see in this panel is as a result of the current tool you're using or the current work you're doing. And by work, I mean what you're currently doing on your worksheet will suggest what will happen to anything that you're having here. So currently you can see that all of these icons are grayed out where they are icons for alignment. I have also mentioned that Photoshop intentionally uses icons in such a way that they are self-explanatory or they are familiar. When you see them, you can automatically understand what they are suggesting or what you can use them for. So if you look at this icon, you can see two bars. One is longer than the other, but there's a straight line that is telling you that even though they don't have the same length, they are aligned towards the left. So it means if I want to achieve this kind of alignment, this is what I need. If I can't use my eyes to get the right proportion, trying to check is it aligned this way, is it not aligned, without stressing myself, this is what I need, right? The next one says you can see the line coming through the center. That's to tell you that if you need to align your elements through the center, if you need them to be balanced through the middle and not towards the left, towards the right, this is what you need. The next one is the opposite of this one, aligning to the left. It aligns to the right. This should I talk about this now? Yes. So this comes into play. I will still show all of this, right? This comes into play when you have when you have three or more elements that you are trying to space out evenly. You are trying to space them. You are trying to space them evenly in a vertical way. That is the space between this and this. I want it to be the same space between this and this. But if I'm using my eyes to gauge, I may not be sure. I want you to ignore the automatic um, sizing you're seeing, right? So Photoshop allows you, it gives you that help that you can also try and wait till it snaps and tells you how many pixels. So you can see that it has shared it equally. I have 60 pixels from the second one at the top, and then I have 60. But if you really don't have the patience, you can automatically use this, and I will show you all of this now. Okay, let me just go ahead and start doing them now. So this, we don't need this, we don't need this. So let's say I have my elements scattered, and then there's a requirement that allows me, or that needs me to align them towards the left. So what do? I will highlight my items and then look up. So if you remember, when I started talking about this, they were grayed out. So now you can see they are grayed out. Why? Because they don't have the environment, or they don't have the go ahead to work yet. Now what's the go ahead to work? It means you must be working with more than one element before you start talking about alignment. So alignment has to do with how multiple things are arranged. Automatically, you cannot arrange one thing. If you lift one thing and place it somewhere else, you have only changed the position. But you cannot be talking about a straight line when you're dealing with just one item. You cannot talk about a queue when you're talking about one person, right? So a queue starts from two people. That's exactly what's happening now. So all of these will be grayed out till I start working with multiple elements. So if I highlight these three items now, you can see them now active. So if I click on this, automatically it aligns to the left. If I highlight again and click on this, it aligns through the center. If I highlight again and click on this, it aligns through the right. And then, so assuming I have different items, different spaces and all, and I want to arrange them equally, I want to space them out equally, then this is where this one comes. So you can see a straight line on top, you can see a bar in the middle, and another straight line below. That will tell you that this one has to do with spacing between multiple elements. So it says distribute vertically, distribute equally vertically, and that's what this will do. If I highlight this three and I click on this, so now if I check for this, I can check for that quickly using this. So if I draw a rectangle to try and imagine what the space is, let's say red is for spacing. If I bring this same red and bring it here, then so it means this red suggests that the space between this and this is the same space between this and this, and I was about to achieve that using this alignment option. So the next one, obviously this one has two bars side by side, and then there's a straight line on top, meaning it snaps your elements to the top, it aligns them towards the top region. So the ones we've been doing so far is to the left, to the right, to the center. So in any case, we have our elements this way, and we want them to be on a straight line towards the top of our worksheet. We can highlight and then click on this, and then we're okay. So this is, so you can see it clearly. So if we click on this, it aligns them towards the top. Okay, so there can be a difference. Let me try and do something here. Okay, so I highlight these three items now, and then I ask it to align them towards the top. So obviously we can see that they are now on the same length, on the same line towards the top alone. So the next one, that's the opposite of this one that aligns vertically through the middle. This one aligns horizontally through the middle, aligns vertical centers. This aligns horizontal centers. This aligns vertical center. It also works in the center but in a vertical way. So if we look at this now, this is the center of the whole design, and they are all aligned towards the center. That's for this. So this is quite obvious. The opposite of this, it aligns them to the base of the design. So all of them will be on the same line towards the base of wherever they are standing on. And again, this is the opposite of this. It also spaces them equally, distributes them equally, however distributes them horizontally. So okay, so I have this far away here, I have this far away here. So the space between this and this is quite smaller than the space between this and this. So how do I check for the spaces? How do I make them get spaced equally? So using this, I automatically have. So if I check the same way I did with that red bar, I will still achieve the same results for this and this. So that's pretty much it about alignment. Alignment allows your work to be neat. So yeah, talking of alignment, this is an example of an aligned work. So if we bring this rectangle now as a ruler, for example, we can tell that this work is aligned towards the left. The whole text is aligned towards the left. If we try and scan this also, this is aligned towards the top, the headline, and then this number 01. So alignment is perfect here, alignment is perfect here, even here, even here, alignment is also perfect. So again, this designer understands alignment, they understand hierarchy, they understand proximity, they understand similarity. So this is an instance of how alignment works. Alignment helps your work to be neat. It gives you that sense of coordination, a sense of orderliness also in your design. So this is alignment in play again, right? Yeah, there's also balance in this design. This full image of wherever this is, and then the text by the left, the image on the right, the text by the left. That's a sense of balance in this design as well. So that's that about alignment. The next principle I will be talking about is movement. So movement allows you as a designer to also help your audience, help your viewers it suggests where you want them to look first. So if you remember, I talked about hierarchy to be what you want them to look or to notice first, what you want them to read first, what you want them to see first. But movement allows their eyes to flow in a direction where you want them, in a direction where you want their eyes to flow. So movement is what do you want them to read, and then where do you want them to go next to read the next thing. So it depends on the way you arrange your design. With this illustration I did now, right, you are either viewing things from this angle down to this angle, right? You are either moving your eyes from here to here or from the biggest to the smallest, but you are really not looking at this space, you are really not paying attention to this space, right? But I've arranged. So imagine I scatter all of this now. So this is another sense of movement. You are either going in a zigzag or in any other form. So movement is how you as a designer have arranged the elements of your design to help your viewer to move from a point to the other to achieve what you want. So there are different forms of movement. There is something called layout in web design, in UI UX design. That's the way you arrange your web page, the way you arrange the elements on your app, the way you arrange the elements even on a flyer for people to move their eyes from an item to the next, to the next, to the next. And they won't know. It's an unconscious thing, but you were intentional about it as a designer when preparing it. But whoever is looking at the design will not know, but they will end up conforming to what you've arranged, to what you've set up for them, but they will not know. So the most popular ones are the F layout and the Z layout. So the F layout, you must have seen something like this before, where an image is placed there and then the description or a text beside it. An image is placed there, description beside it, an image. So this looks like an F, obviously. They will come from this angle, come to this place, come down, come to this place, return here, come down again. So that's just how it works. So this F is supposed to be like a movement, like an arrow. They move from the point to the next, return to this place, left to the right. So the next one is the Z layout. It's a form of movement also. Nobody calls it Z, nobody calls it anything, but because the designer, well, in this case, because I intentionally placed it in this structure, anyone viewing this, if this were to be a web page, will probably come and see this image first, read the text, and then move in this way, and then move in this way. So it is actually not something fixed. I can have 10 of this arrangement, so it will be like a zigzag, 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 zigzag till this. So what I'm trying to achieve is I did not arrange this in a linear way such that they can scroll, from the top and then scan through in the center. No, but I intentionally arranged my elements in such a way that they will find themselves viewing or scanning through from the left to the right, from the left to the right. So there's a way you can intentionally suggest that. There's a way you can control the movement of the eyes of your viewers. So you are not just doing it for fun, you are doing it for them to see what they should see first, or they should see what they ought to see more than the others. So all of these things are supposed to be how you guide whoever is using your design to achieve a specific purpose. Of course, every design is purposeful, every design has a reason. Of course, except portfolio designs that we created, and of course, even portfolio designs were created, added to our portfolios so that a potential recruiter or whoever is hiring can see our capability. So in that way, it is not even useless. It has its own purpose too. So yeah, every principle, everything we are doing is for a specific purpose. You are not just manipulating people and sitting back and laughing. No, you are making them see what they should see first, jump to the next thing, to the next thing. Remember that hierarchy will also help you to do this, right? But the difference between this and hierarchy is, if you remember the illustration I did for hierarchy, the text you were supposed to see first is in the middle. The one you are supposed to see next is the last. The one you are now supposed to see last is the first on the list. So in that way, it's different from movement. Movement will intentionally arrange things chronologically or in any way just for people to see what they should see. So what the difference is, you are doing things in terms of a kind of strategic arrangement. Emphasis can be done in any way. Hierarchy can be done in any way to achieve emphasis. You can emphasize colors, you can emphasize text, you can emphasize shape, but you are not exactly paying attention to the movement, right? So that's the difference between movement and hierarchy. But the goal is actually the same. People will see the most important things first. They will move their eyes in the most important directions first. So that's that. The next one is consistency. So consistency is quite simple. The word already suggests what it means. It means if you are following a pattern, ideally you're not expected to deviate from that pattern, because whoever is doing your design, again, if you pay attention, I'm still talking about who is using your design, who is doing your design. Yes, because any design you make is not exactly for you. It's not exactly for you. So if it's fine to you, is it readable to the others? If you are placing pink on a red background and it looks fancy to you, when they are testing it for contrast, will it pass? Can people see it visibly? So it's not really for us as the designers, it's for whoever is seeing it. So in terms of consistency, if we are already following a particular trend, a particular pattern, and we deviate from it, it is likely to distract or disrupt the flow of our audience. So it's a simple requirement: stick to what you have started doing, stick to what you started with. So in terms of so this is just an illustration. The pattern is black, after black is yellow, after yellow is black. So they are already familiar with what's to happen next. So imagine black and then yellow, and they're expecting me to be on black and I'm still on yellow. Okay, no problem. Black, yellow, then suddenly red. So this is a poor illustration of, well, we can't even say poor form of consistency, because it was never consistent. So that's the difference. Consistency comes into play in something like this. So let me take out all of this rectangle. So imagine this designer using this line for each number. So red or pink, I can't tell exactly. So imagine this is red, and suddenly this is yellow. So I'm likely to pause. My flow has been disrupted. I'm likely to wonder why these two are red and why this is suddenly yellow. So it's as simple as that. A break in flow by stopping what you've been consistent with will affect who is viewing your design. Another form of consistency is this. Look at the weight of this text. Look at the same thing here. So imagine they drop it for invest and they switch to this. We will be wondering, is this not supposed to be the third point on the list? What is happening suddenly? Then inconsistency has scattered the flow again. So again, this designer understands the principle of consistency. Continue what you started with to achieve the goal you have promised us that we will achieve by starting to review your design. We have seen this pattern already. There's a line, there's a number, there's a title. The next one, there's a line, there's a number, there's a title. So imagine if there's a line but a different color, and instead of figure 0 and then figure 3, we suddenly find the Roman numeral I, and then invest the small letter. So I mean, the sudden change would affect things, and affect even them. Their marketing goal may be after point 1, point 2, point 3, there's a call to action which is maybe buy now or add to cart. If we get confused at this point, we are likely to abandon cart or not to buy. But they won't know that their marketing budget and everything is going to waste because their designer does not understand consistency, and it is affecting us. So that's consistency in play. Again, consistency happens when you are using icons, right? You are trying to create for a flyer design. The flyer design we did for, or we saw for okay, this does not have trying to look for, so the same thing. So imagine they used how can I show you quickly? So when using icons, this is my point. When using icons, for example, when you understand the concept of fill and stroke already, fill and stroke. So let's say, so I'm trying to explain consistency, right? I'm trying to explain consistency. So um, I'm trying to use this method, let's say for a list, right? I'm using strokes alone, red stroke, and then a little bit heavy. So I say number one. So I put number one there, and then I do the same thing. Let's say I duplicate this, number one, number two, number three. So this is number two, and then this is number three. So suddenly I changed my mind from using this pattern of having a shape without fill, no color, just the stroke, and that's red. The same thing here. And then on number three, I just decided, why don't we do something like this? Have a fill, and then let the three be white. In that case, I have failed the principle of consistency. I was consistent with number one, number two, and then suddenly number three I have changed. So the implication may be one and two. Again, this is the principle of similarity in play. It may imply, or they may interpret it as, okay, one and two are maybe suggesting something else. Then the third point is suggesting something entirely different. Well, this may be me being forgetful, forgetting what I started with and all, and I have thought, or I am thinking that I have passed the same message across for one, two, and three. However, using different um, using different forms. This is just stroke, this is just stroke, and this is fill, full color. Using different things, I have suggested that number three is entirely different from number one and number two, and that's likely to cause problems. So yeah, that's consistency and why consistency is important in design. So the last one I will be talking about is the principle of typography. Typography. Except you are working with, a photograph, you are editing a photo, you are working with a photo book, something like that. That's or you are illustrating, you are designing the logo. Even when you are designing the logo, that's the only case that you may not need to deal with typography. Meanwhile, you are expected to understand typography, you are expected to know what it is. Typography has to do with everything that has to do with what you are typing in design. When you are typing, you are already doing things around typography. When you are studying fonts, you are doing things around typography. When you are changing font sizes, you are changing, you are making it bold, you are making it italicized, or everything you are doing is around typography. So typography is actually a little bit broad, a little bit broad. So most times designers say, um, I want to download a font. I want to download a font. I want to download the font. However, there's a difference between fonts. There's a difference between the font family. There's a difference between typeface, and I will take my time to explain now. I have done a little bit of illustration for easy comprehension. So a typeface is actually what we mean whenever we say we are going online to download a font. What you are downloading is not a font, but you are downloading a typeface. You are downloading a typeface, right? So a typeface a group is a group of um is a group of I don't want to say a group of fonts because I want to explain fonts separately, right? But it's a group. It contains the font family. I'm not saying it contains fonts, different fonts now. No, it contains the font family. So I can say a typeface is a group of font family. I will relate this with a familiar context very soon. So for example, um, the name Trump. The name Trump is the name of a family, right? Trump, Trump, is the name of a family. In that family, there is a Donald, that is a president. He probably has a younger brother that is Slim. He has maybe a younger brother, a sister, and all that has a different nature. He has uh, maybe an elder brother that is tall. So I'm saying in a family, we have people with different features in that family. However, they are still grouped together under one family, which is the typeface. So to Times New Roman seems to be one of the most popular typefaces we have. So the name Times New Roman is not the name of a font. It's the name of a typeface, right? So we are typing a document and then someone says change the font name to, or change the font to Times New Roman. That's wrong. It is change the typeface to Times New Roman. Times New Roman is the typeface, is the name of the family. Inside Times New Roman, we have regular, we have italics, we have bold, and we have bold italics. Right? There are four, but I intentionally picked out three so it can match with this other one. Because I plan to do a contrast between the two. So the typeface, the family of this typeface, Times New Roman, is regular, is italics, is bold. So when I'm typing with the typeface Times New Roman, I can choose the family I want to work with or the family member I want to use. If it's regular or bold when I'm about to use or type my title, italics when I'm about to type a quotation, for example, and regular when I'm about to type the body text. And then the next thing I said was what? Times New Roman, bold, family member, and then the size is what? 18.22 pt. Pt is point. I've explained in the first session that the unit of measurement for when you are typing for a text is in point. For design, can be pixel, can be centimeter, can be inches, and all units of measurement. But when you are typing, the unit of measurement is point, pt, so 18 points. So yeah, the collection of all of the selection I have made while typing is what is called the font. So if I am typing and someone asks me what font are you using, I'm not supposed to say Times New Roman alone. I will say Times New Roman, the bold family member of Times New Roman, or the bold Times New Roman that is 18.22 large or 18.22 small. That is the font. The font is the collective property of everything I have selected under the typeface within the family and the size I am working with. The characteristics, everything all together is the font. Again, the name is the typeface, the collective name is the typeface, and then the nature, the characteristics based on the physical property, yes, based on the physical property, is whether it's regular, whether it's italics, whether it's bold. Those are the family members. And then whatever I've selected from this typeface, whatever I've picked from the family, the size I'm using all together, all of these make up the font I'm working with. So it's the same thing for Montserrat. Montserrat is also a typeface. Helvetica is a typeface. I think Arial is a typeface. Which other one? Calibri is a typeface. Cambria is a typeface. All of these most likely have regular, they have italics, and they have bold. Montserrat, for example, is very broad. It has up to 8 or more family members. Extra light, thin, extra light, italic, thin italics, all of these are the family members of the typeface called Montserrat, right? So, um, the selection I make, anything I make out of the selection, anything I've picked is now my font. So the last thing under typography is the nature of the typeface. The nature of the typeface I'm working with. So when we talk about nature, we see it as, remember, typeface is like the family name, right? So nature now has to do with, is this family a rich family? Is this family a fancy family or a broke family, right? So talking about nature now, there are two natures in typography. Anywhere, two natures in typography. You must have heard it before. We have the serif and we have the sans serif nature. So sometimes people get it confused. When I say font, then I also hear serif, I also hear sans serif, I also hear regular bold. So all of these have their names, they all have places where they fall under, right? So every family, every typeface is either into two groups, whether the rich group or the broke group. So I will term the rich group as the serif group. Why? Because the serif group is, or the serif nature of any typeface is one that has a tail or any fancy line at the edges. You can tell that we see this in a lot of typeface. Times New Roman is a very popular serif typeface. So if you pay attention to what I just said now, Times New Roman is a serif typeface, right? And Montserrat, on the other hand, is a sans serif typeface. So let's use English. Let's say this way. Serif, to understand all of this clearly, serif is the presence of all these fancy tails and all these extra lines and all. Sans serif is the absence. No serif, no tail, no design, no extra you understand? There is no decoration, yes. And that is why I said we can understand this by using the analogy of the rich family and the broke family, right? So this is just simple, it's just plain, just straight to the point. Why this has all these fancy decorations around. So every typeface is either a serif typeface or a sans serif typeface. And of course, all of these have different places where they come into play. Why people prefer this to that, or serif serif typeface, for example, are used for fancy designs, wedding invitations, classic designs, newspaper designs, newspaper names, newspaper headlines. You see things like New York Times, for example. The fonts, I mean the typeface they use, I can't tell exactly if it's Times New Roman or something else, but the nature is serif. The nature is serif. I can picture it in my head right now. So sans serif are usually applied. I mean, they are used when you are working with serious designs, magazine designs that are not casual, business magazine designs or business designs, for example, brochure designs. You know, different places. So all of them have their specific purpose. None is outdated. None is too modern for the other one. No, they all work in different contexts, and it's based on what you're doing, the kind of design you want to achieve, or the kind of feel you want to have for the design you are working with. Yes, so that will be the last principle, typography. That's the last principle on my list. And Okay, so yeah, again, back to this main design, trying to analyze what we have here now. So we want to see, I've mentioned some of the principles that we can see in this design, right? But now that I've added some other ones, explained some other ones, let's come back again and see how all of this works. From this line again, we can see alignment, as I said, aligned in a straight line towards the right. All of this aligned on a straight line towards the left. This is the use of hierarchy and is also the understanding of typography, right? I can't tell the exact typeface used here, but the family is obviously a bold one. So if you pay attention to what I've been saying, when we first came to this, I've been using the word text. Text. The text is heavy, the text is bold because I had the plan to talk about typography later. So if I start talking about typeface, fonts, and serif and everything, before I got to that stage, you are likely to be confused. So now I can say this person understands typography. They may have used the same typeface. I don't know the exact name, but it does look like Montserrat. So this is a bold or black family of the typeface Montserrat. This is a regular typeface of the font of the a regular font family of the typeface Montserrat. But to analyze this font, this is likely Montserrat's regular font family and maybe 12 points. That's in terms of the size, 12 points. And of course, it's a sans serif typeface because it has no decoration around the edges, no decoration at the tip, there's no tail, there's no extra, no lines and all. So yeah, there is also consistency in the arrangement, number before the heading, number before the heading, number before the heading. There is also the use of proximity, there is the use of similarity, and then there is white space allowing design to breathe. So imagine being tempted that okay, so what happens to this whole area? Are we not going to put anything there? And you start looking for things to put there. When you present the design versus this would actually be picked by top designers who understand design principles because this is neater, this has enough white space, this is filled with principles compared to very busy design. So again, design principle is the difference between a fine design and a standard design. People pay for standard design that helps them to achieve the purpose they are hiring a designer for. Design principles are what recruiters look out for when they want to shortlist who understands design and who likes to design. Design principle is very, very key. And with that, I will be bringing the session to an end. Thank you. Thank you very much.